In this video, I'm going to share with you how I got my Mexican residency for under $1,000. So if you want to get your Mexican residency, but you don't want to spend the big bucks, then you're going to want to stay till the end of this video. Most people, when they think about the Mexican residency process, they think about it as some mysterious process that requires thousands of dollars. This is my truth. I was able to get my permanent Mexican residency for under $1,000, and I'm gonna show you what I did. Before we get started, I'm gonna explode some myths. The first myth is that you need thousands of dollars. The second is that you have to go through the temporary residency process first. And the third is that you can't do it without the help of one of those expensive consultants. I started my process by going to the INM website because the website contains all the information that you need for your residency process. Now, the website is in Spanish, and unfortunately, I don't speak Spanish, so I couldn't understand anything on it. However, there is a translator on the website, and I was able to translate that information into English and read all of it. I still had a whole bunch of questions. So I reached out to my nearest consulate, which is the Washington, D.C. consulate. It's a very busy consulate. And so I had a lot of problems getting through. So I reached out to the next closest consulate, which is the Philadelphia consulate. It's also a lot less busy, and they responded to me right away. They asked me to email them a request, which I did. And they responded back with a list of all the things that I needed to provide to them before they would schedule my visa appointment. So here's the list. I needed to provide a passport-sized photograph, a copy of my passport. I needed to complete the application form, which they provided, proof of residency, as well as proof of income. And I could prove my income in one of two ways. The first way was to provide 12 months worth of financial statements showing that I had at least $68,000 in the bank. The second way was to provide 6 months worth of recent pay stubs showing that I made at least $4,068 a year. So I chose to provide them my most recent 12 months worth of financial statements showing that I had more than $68,000 in my account. I emailed my completed package to them, and they reviewed it for accuracy. There were several inaccuracies that required corrections, and I made those corrections. And once they were satisfied that my application was accurate, they emailed me with a list of dates. I selected the earliest date possible, and they reminded me that I needed to make sure that I arrived there on time, and I sure did. My visa appointment took place at the Philadelphia consulate, which is located 2.5 hours away from where I live, and I drove there. When I arrived, I met with the consulate specialist, and he was very nice and very professional. And since he happened to be the individual who reviewed my package, he told me that everything was accurate and asked me if I wanted to get the temporary residency or the permanent residency. And I was super surprised because I didn't even know that I had the option of securing a permanent residency. So of course, I opted for the permanent residency. We sat down and he shared a little bit about the culture, and he asked me some questions. I answered them, and he was satisfied. He took me to pay my consulate fee, and I did that. He stamped my passport with a 6-month visa and told me that I needed to complete the second and final part of the residency process in Mexico. He said it was very important that when I arrived in Mexico to make sure that I got a physical stamp on my visa. He said that was very important, and I made sure to make a note of that. For the second part of the residency process, I realized I was going to need some help. So I made some inquiries in some of the various expat groups that I was a part of to see if they could tell me the steps that would make this second half smooth. Luckily, on one of the platforms, I was able to get an answer. It was one of those anonymous platforms. And this individual, not only did they give me step-by-step instructions, but they also gave me a recommendation for an immigration attorney, for which I am truly grateful. That immigration attorney has an office in Jalisco in Mexico, and I reached out to them through WhatsApp. They were very helpful, very professional, and very courteous. Initially, I told them that I was interested in finalizing my residency process in Mexico City, and they gave me a referral to an agent there. However, when I looked at the quote for the agent in Mexico City compared to the one in Guadalajara, I chose the one in Guadalajara because it was significantly cheaper. The immigration attorney told me that everyone's situation is different, and that based on what he's saying with my paperwork, that my process was going to be pretty simple. And since I had a visa stamp for 6 months, he told me that he could schedule an appointment for me within those 6 months and wanted to know when I wanted it to be. And I told him that I wanted my trip to Mexico to also include my kids so that we could make a little vacation of it. So he scheduled the appointment for summertime when my children were out for summer vacation. When we arrived in Mexico, I met an agent and told them that I needed to get my visa physically stamped. And so while my children were going through the regular line, I was directed to where I could get my passport stamped. I met my immigration attorney for the very first time on the day of my immigration appointment. His demeanor was very consistent with our virtual conversations, and it was such a pleasure to meet him. He made everything easy. I barely had to do a thing. I paid my INM fee, and at the conclusion, I also paid the attorney. However, he stayed with me until the end of the process. I'm happy to say that at the end of my immigration appointment, I left with my physical card in hand. And this is my Mexican permanent residency card. You might be wondering how much all of this cost. The consulate fee was $55. The INM fee was $300. The immigration attorney fee was $250. The round trip ticket for myself was $325. And the Airbnb was just under $20 a night. All in all, this process cost me under $1,000. Since the process only took me 1 day in Mexico, I had ample time to enjoy the Mexican culture, the people, the food, and the music, and we left with great memories. Just as everyone's situation is different, everyone's process can be different. Some people prefer to do things DIY. Some people prefer to use a lot of experts. And my process was somewhere in between, and it saved me a lot of money while giving me peace of mind. I'm a big believer that instead of spending more, it's more important to spend smart. What would you go for? Would you go for a temporary residency, or would you go for a permanent residency? And which process would you use? Would you do DIY? Would you use a consultant? Or would you go for something in between? If this video sparked your curiosity about spending smarter instead of spending more, please like, subscribe, and share this. I invite you to join me on this journey. I'm Empress Wanderlust, and my goal is to help you secure your financial freedom and strengthen family while pursuing fearless reinvention abroad after 50. Thanks for watching. Move smart, live well, and stay secure, and I'll see you in the next video.